Welcome back to the Cap Report. It's International Fight Week and we are less than 48 hours from UFC 276, Adesanya vs. Cannonier. This is probably one of the better cards of the year, and I'm pretty hyped for it. And in this video, I'm just going to give some of my thoughts, predictions, and some analysis on each of the fights of the main card. There's going to be timestamps in the description as well if you just want to see predictions on specific fights. We open up the card in the bantamweight division, where Pedro Munhoz takes on Sean O'Malley. This is a really interesting matchup, probably the biggest step up in competition so far for O'Malley in his career. This is his first ranked opponent, I believe. Munhoz is coming off of back-to-back losses to Dominic Cruz and Jose Aldo, both decisions, and O'Malley's coming off of 3 wins, all by knockout. Intriguingly, O'Malley's last loss came to Chito Vera, who found success through the calf kick, which is a big weapon of Pedro Munhoz. It'll be interesting to see how that plays out in this fight. O'Malley has the reach advantage and the height advantage, and he can be very creative in how he uses those. I'm interested to see if he'll take an approach similar to what Jose Aldo did to nullify the leg kicks, because he can be really light on his feet, as he's always throwing so many feints, and he lifts his leg up a lot for those kind of like teep kicks and front kicks, that I wonder if he'll be able to just kind of move his leg out the way and check the kicks. I'm not sure about the checking the kicks just because his leg can be, he's proven to be a little bit brittle. But yeah, I just don't see O'Malley taking that more cautious defensive approach that Aldo did against Munhoz in order to nullify the leg kicks. With the reach advantage, I could see him attempt to discourage leg kicks by simply throwing strikes down the middle every time Munhoz throws a leg kick, which Aldo did that a little bit as well in their fight. O'Malley does a great job of range control, particularly with front kicks and setting up feints. I imagine that's the approach he'll take here. I think how this fight plays out relies on what approach Munhoz takes. He'll likely need to pressure and cut the distance to limit O'Malley's mobility, be that through using leg kicks to cut mobility or maybe even through level changes, takedowns and whatnot. Looking at the odds, O'Malley is a minus 295 favorite, which does seem a little high to me. Munhoz being a plus 245 favorite. I really want to pick Munhoz here and I'd love to see him win, but I'm leaning O'Malley by decision on the pick, just given how strong Munhoz's chin is. I think that he'll probably be able to, give O'Malley trouble. But at the end of the day, O'Malley's just got such a length advantage on him that he'll be able to kind of point him from afar, hurt him a little bit here and there, but he's never going to be able to put him away, I don't think. I think just Munhoz will have to be chasing too much to find the finish, and O'Malley will be able to kind of pick him apart from afar and counter as well. Next up on the card, we move to the welterweight division, where former champ Robbie Lawler takes on Bryan Barberena. This fight got moved up to the main card after Miesha Tate and Lauren Murphy had to get pushed back. I don't have an issue with it. This is nice seeing Lawler on the main card. And this should be an exciting fight for sure based on these two styles. Robbie Lawler finished Nick Diaz last year to end a 4-fight losing skid. Bryan Barberena is on a 2-fight win streak, his last being against a veteran in Matt Brown. To be honest, I expect this to be pretty much a stand and bang kind of fun fight. Lawler looked good in his last fight, but I hold caution with that given that it was Nick Diaz's return fight, and he hadn't fought in so long that, it's almost like an outlier. And Robbie's 40, and he's been through so many wars that I do hold caution in what I expect to see from him here. I do give him far more of a chance than he did in some of his previous matchups, just because I don't expect Barberena to try and wrestle him, cause him a lot of issues in some of his later fights. Surprisingly, in my opinion, Lawler stands as the minus 120 favorite to Barberena, being a plus 100 underdog. And you know what, for fun, I'll go ahead and pick Lawler by decision. I think these guys are going to go at it for 3 rounds, and that, maybe Lawler will just be able to hold a little more success in the strike. Next up, we go to a number 1 contender fight in the middleweight division between Sean Strickland and Alex Pereira. It's pretty crazy to think that Pereira is already in a top contender fight so fast in his MMA career. His current record stands at 5-1. But he has a big professional kickboxing record, some flashy finishes, and a backstory in history with champion Israel Adesanya that a fight can be built around. Having beaten Adesanya twice and being the only fighter to knock him out, you can tell why the organization's fast-tracking him to a title fight. And at age 34, there is a limited time to cash in on such an opportunity. That being said, he is facing the biggest competition in the UFC so far for him, in Sean Strickland. In terms of the top 5 fighter matchups he could get, Strickland is definitely on the lighter end of it, and he does feel a little more limited for other top 5 fighters in the weight class. Strickland himself has become rather infamous for what he says in and out of the cage, but his style isn't so flashy. He's got a strong stand-up game and a good takedown defense, and he's pretty much able to walk his opponents down and just overwhelm them with volume. He's on a 5-win run, but I do think that Strickland is very close to his ceiling. The odds are at minus 110 each, and I'm totally fine with that. This feels like one of those where if someone is going to finish the fight, it's going to be Pereira, and if it goes to decision, it's more likely to be Strickland. That being said, I could see Pereira winning a decision as well, likely dropping Strickland once or twice to be able to kind of cancel out the volume if that's the case. It just feels like a stylistic matchup that favors Pereira, who has more weapons and bigger power. A lot of this fight is going to be more in the pocket, and because of that, my prediction is going to be Alex Pereira by 2nd round knockout. Now we reach the title fight, starting in the co-main event. In the featherweight division, the trilogy fight between Alex Volkanovski and Max Holloway. Their last fight was very close. I had Volkanovski winning the first fight and Holloway winning the second fight. The judges didn't see it that way, as Volkanovski had won both fights by decision. I think the second by split decision. In my opinion, this has been up there as what could be one of the best best fights this year. Both have fought twice since their last fight, Holloway beating Calvin Kattar and Yair Rodriguez, and Volkanovski beating Brian Ortega and Korean Zombie. The first fight, Holloway started a little too slow, and Volkanovski was able to eat at his leg with the leg kicks early on, putting Holloway behind for the whole fight. Although he was able to rally in the later rounds, it just simply wasn't enough to save the fight for him. Moving into the second fight, Holloway made great adjustments and looked way better right away. Brought the pace earlier, dropped Volkanovski in each of the first 2 rounds before Volk started, really making his in-fight adjustments. The fight became a chess match with each fighter feigning, giving each other different looks to see how they react and to set the other up. Volk would eventually take back the momentum, winning arguably the next 2 rounds. An interesting note is that in those early rounds, Max seemed to control more of the attacks down the middle, even dropping Volkanovski with an uppercut. In the later rounds, Volkanovski did a great job of kind of occupying that area more. His movement got him in and out of the pocket in a very, quick manner and at a number of different angles. And he started really started landing the jab down the middle, kind of keeping Max at bay. Ultimately, upon rewatching the fight, it feels still razor close to me. I feel like 1 and 2 were clear Max rounds. 4 was clear to Volkanovski. To me, 3 and 5 are both debatable. They're really tight. I do lean Holloway still, but I think it's really close. In the third round, the last minute or so from Volkanovski makes that round super tight as well for me. But yeah, ultimately I still scored the fight for Holloway 48-47. But it'll be interesting to see what adjustments will be made going into this fight. Max is in a tight spot because I feel he needs to slow down just a little bit on the pace earlier in terms of saving some gas early in the fight, because he did look kind of beat by the end of the second fight, and he was gassed by the end of the first fight too. But the early pace really allowed him to take a lead in the second fight, and it's kind of what saved him, I think, from some of that leg damage that he took in the first fight. Obviously, he adopted more of the leg kicks, which also helped and made a huge difference in that second fight for him. But it's hard for me to see how much more Max can do to be better. I really think what changed the fight was when Volkanovski was able to start landing more, especially down the middle. As I said, it kept Max at bay, and then once again, he just angled his approaches so well, moving in and out. I think mixing in the takedowns really helped Volkanovski land his strikes, and also I think it just really helped at eating at Max's gas tank. But I don't think that they really played much of a role in how the fight was scored. At least I don't think they should have. I don't think anything was really achieved with those takedowns other than kind of what I said. So from a scoring perspective, I think that they really weren't relevant. But from a tactical point, I understand why they were important. Volkanovski is a -190 favorite, and Holloway is a +160 underdog. I don't have an issue with these odds. It's a close fight in my eyes, but it's hard, to name the guy who lost the first 2 fights to favorite. It's really hard to win the third fight of a trilogy, particularly when you lost the second fight, and especially when you lost the first 2. In terms of my own prediction, I think this fight is so hard to predict. This is such a chess match. I feel like it should be Volkanovski, but I think if Max can find that uppercut again in the first 3 rounds, he might be able to finish it, because he caught Volkanovski with it, maybe even the head kick. It really just depends what's there for him. He's calling that he's going to get a finish win the first 3 rounds, and I think he might have to. I mean, even if he can just get the first 3, then he'll win the fight as long as he can survive. I could see Volkanovski trying to take this fight to the ground a little more than he has in the past. Holloway does have the threat of the guillotine there, but I don't think that he'll be able to really pull it off if Ortega wasn't. I don't know, man. This fight is super difficult, but ultimately, I'm going to go with Volkanovski by decision. Finally, we reached the main event in the middleweight division as Israel Adesanya takes on Jared Cannonier. Cannonier comes into this fight winning 5 of his last 6, coming off of wins versus Kevin Gastelum and Derek Brunson. And Adesanya is undefeated at middleweight with 2 wins since he failed to move up to become a double champ, with wins over Marvin Vettori and Robert Whittaker in a rematch. Actually, both of those fights being rematches. And looking at this fight, we see the basic issue that most fighters have with Adesanya, and that's dealing with his reach advantage. It's interesting the different levels of success people have had against him, all having that same problem. For example, Kevin Gastelum gave him tons of problems, but he dispatched Paulo Costa with ease. Yoel Romero was interesting as he basically just sat back and made Adesanya come to him. Whittaker had struggled the first time, and the second time he found some success, but I find it hard for other middleweights to really be able to recreate what Whittaker was able to do. So where does Cannonier lie on the spectrum? Unlike many of these guys, I think he's more equipped to deal with the leg kicks, as he actually does check leg kicks and he'll throw them back. I don't see him struggling to the level of Costa. I just think he has more fight IQ than Costa does. And if he tries to get inside, he does have like massive power. This dude used to be a heavyweight that he could cause problems. Honestly though, I don't even think it would be a bad idea for him to try and get into the clinch too, just from disengagements, trying to catch Adesanya that way. Adesanya is proven to have solid takedown defense, and I wonder if Cannonier will look to takedowns at all, even if it's just to mix things up. He probably should. As I said, it just provides another element for Adesanya to be aware of and it's almost like trying to do what Adesanya does, where he just gives you so many options, so you have to choose to defend something. Going back to the concept of getting on the inside, though, Cannonier has to be really careful, because even on the inside, Adesanya is an extremely difficult matchup. I mean, look back at that pull counter he did on Robert Whittaker. The first time he knocked him out, it was crazy. And even on the second fight, the rematch with Robert Whittaker, he basically had to give up one of his hands to defending every time he entered into the pocket. That being said, Adesanya sits at a -410 favorite, and Cannonier is a +30 underdog. Honestly, I'm fine with these odds. I don't think Cannonier presents any new crazy threats to Adesanya that he's yet to deal with. I could see it being a little more difficult than expected, and I can see both guys trying to sit back initially, poke each other from from distance. Eventually, I think Cannonier will have to press inside. He's defensively sound, and he should be able to make it into the pocket, and I think he can present some questions to Izzy and some problems, but not enough to find a finish. I could see him, rocking Izzy at some point, kind of like Yoel Romero, but I see Izzy ultimately winning the majority of the exchanges here. And I think that he can catch Cannonier on a counter when he's coming inside, when he's throwing inside the pocket. I think ultimately we're going to see an Adesanya who gets back to winning with a finish, and I'm going to go with a third-round knockout as the prediction. And with that, we've reached the end of the card. Let me know what y'all think on the fights. What are your predictions? Who do you think's gonna win? What do you think about my predictions? Just anything. All comments are appreciated, and don't forget to leave a like, subscribe, all that kind of stuff. Yeah, I think we got a really good card on hand. I'm really excited because I'm actually gonna be able to watch these. I got Saturday off. Yeah, guys, let's enjoy these fights. This has been the Cap Report.